So, welcome everybody to our next session of Fire by Live series. Today, I'm joined by Frederick Hauser, the technical advisor for Asteri Group, the organization behind Hostmaster. Frederick is an expert in all things fire and rescue and will be talking us through the importance and benefits of Hostmaster. So, thank you so much for joining me, Frederick. I really appreciate it. Just before we kick off, could you please introduce yourself and just give us an insight of your background?
Good morning, Rebecca. Thanks for inviting me to the show. I'm excited to be here and really talk a little bit about this amazing piece of equipment that was just introduced into the United States. Has been operating in Europe for more than 15 years. I was blessed to have a 40-year career in the American Fire Services. Spent most of my time in the fire station, managing fire hose, being a firefighter, being a paramedic, and kind of went through the ranks a little bit and became an administrator and eventually became the person who purchased equipment for our firefighters to help make them more efficient and more safe. And I discovered Hosemaster, like many of us here in the U.S. at a major trade show, and fell in love with the machine, and thought that I might be able to help them translate the application of the machine here in our country, in our environment.
Definitely, and I'm sure in your kind of experience background, you're very much used to seeing all types of technology and equipment on the market.
I
And I think
am.
one of the most difficult things for a fire service is when we talk about fire safety and firefighting, we're not just talking about fire safety, we're talking about life safety. So when it comes to
That's right.
equipment, the reliability, the fire industry is an industry that is stereotypically quite slow to change and quite slow to technology, but that's
It
because of
is.
the risks and the cautions that come with testing, maintenance, and using new equipment. So it's very interesting to hear your background and your take and get your perspective. So to start,
Thank
let's
you.
talk a little bit about Hostmaster itself. So can you just give us a brief overview of what it is, what it does, and obviously some of the key features that set it apart from other similar products in the market?
I can, Rebecca. It's when we saw it here in the U.S., it does so many things at the same time that we were disoriented by the complexity of the machine and the completeness of the machine. It's as if someone had been watching all of the things that we do on a daily basis or frequent basis to fire hose, and somehow they encapsulated it all in one machine. So this machine, which is fully enclosed, which means it protects the firefighter. It's up high. It's at a nice, comfortable working surface. It's all computer operated. It's got the latest, technology in terms of, data collection, data management. And so it goes through a process where the hose enters the machine, and the very first thing it goes through is a really robust cleaning process. And as it moves through the machine, it gets pressure tested and leak tested incrementally. When we can talk a little bit about what the purpose of that is. And then as it goes on, the machine will mark the location where a leak or some irregularity has been detected. And then it will move into a phase of removing the water, the surface water, drying the hose sufficiently that it can be coiled or reloaded onto apparatus. And then it coils the hose up very nicely and presents it to the firefighter. So it does all of those things in just a matter of minutes. Steps that would take 30 minutes to an hour for firefighters to clean a really small portion of hose, and really not even have a chance to test it. So this machine does all of those things simultaneously.
Mm. Definitely. And obviously speaking from somebody who has experience in the US fire service, the US fire service is structured fairly differently to other areas of the world. And obviously you're not just firefighters, you're like you said, you're paramedics and EMTs, and you work with law enforcement and so on and so forth. So there's a lot of time obviously where you're out on calls.
There is.
So being able to speed up that administrative side of things or that maintenance side of things to prevent any kind of issues or risks afterwards is something that is a key responsibility for fire services all around the world, not just the US. But so to have those capabilities, that's fantastic to hear about. And I'm interested to know who would benefit the most from using Hostmaster. Like why is it kind of one of the most essential tools for them?
Rebecca, I love your point that the efficiency that I discovered the same thing in Europe. the ability to return a fire company to service and to do it in a safe way, I think are really key to your last point. And I think we're seeing, that is now appearing in the U.S. where fire administrators want, especially in large logistics centers where there's a lot of hose to process after a big event, for example. And those firefighters need to get their equipment back in service and be available for the next incident because it's just around the corner. In fact, a lot of times it's occurring, simultaneously. So this machine, I would say, is targeted really to any fire department or combination of fire departments that have a need pretty much to clean hose and test hose on a regular basis, or have such a large quantity of hose that doing it manually it just isn't efficient. And in some cases, what we're talking about here in the U.S. is, is it really safe to handle the hose as much as we are and to kind of aerosolize the contaminants that are coming off the fire hose? We're bringing them back to the fire station. And so, that's still, being discussed in the American Fire Services. But for the most part, we see these machines either located in a logistics center, in a metro system, where, and this is a one operator machine. So it doesn't take two, three, four firefighters to perform this same work that's being done manually in using hose master. So in a metro system and a logistics center where there are tens of thousands of feet of fire hose being processed annually, we see that that's one way that it's applied in Europe. And the second is in a fire station that is centrally located around other fire stations who can come in after a fire and bring their hose and clean it and test it and return it to service more quickly. And that, again, that machine can be, operated by one firefighter. They can clean and test 15, 20 sections of hose per hour. And that hose, when it comes out of the machine, is ready to go on the rack for storage or, back on an apparatus.
Definitely. And you mentioned a lot of key points there that we'll touch upon a little bit later on in the
Sure.
interview. And yeah, absolutely. Like I said, it's not just the role of a firefighter that's changing, but we're in a very modern era in terms of our cities are growing not just vertically but horizontally as well. So
Yes.
time out on a call might be a lot longer than typically attending a house fire, for example. So there's lots of different elements there, which means that our reliance on technology is becoming more and more. So obviously hose testing is critical part of ensuring reliability, like you said. Can you just stop temporarily on why exactly is it necessary, hose testing? Are there any specific standards or anything that comes into play here?
Yeah, Rebecca, that's a great question. The Across the globe, both in Europe and in the US, there are very rigorous standards for testing fire hose on a regular basis to ensure serviceability. For my fire service peers, we understand what that means, but for someone else, they might not. So let me break that down a little bit. The fire hose is, multiple layers of both textiles and a rubber lining of some sort that are joined together. And as you can imagine, pulling hose off of a fire apparatus off of a truck and pushing it through the streets and around corners and in doorways and over broken glass and metal and debris, and taking it into high heat, high contamination environments. And at the end of that hose is a nozzle and firefighters who are trying to get to occupants, who are trying to save property and stop the spread of the fire. That is not the time to discover that the fire hose has a hole in it, or that it might fracture, or the couplings might come off, or that it has a separation between the layers. And so, at a minimum, we find that most standards and requirements uh, have us test the hose on an annual basis, and we lay that hose out in full length, just like they did when they manufactured it. And that process, really under pressure in a safe environment, allows us to examine the fire hose because we can't have it fail for the safety of the people that we serve. and are protecting, especially in those moments. You only have moments to get to a fire and get water on it. And we certainly can't have firefighters in a hose in a firefighting situation where the hose could possibly fail. So it's critical that fire hose gets tested at least annually, and that's the standard here in the U.S. Um, and we think that the hose master kind of raises that standard a little bit, which is what we've experienced in Europe.
Definitely. And obviously, testing methods are constantly evolving. So can you explain a little bit on the alternative testing approach? And, how does this differ from, perhaps a more traditional method? Does it improve efficiency? Does it compromise safety? What area can you enlighten us a little bit on this?
So, we have great respect for the standards setting agencies who are not only designing kind of the best practice for testing, which again, I think, is based on the way that hose is tested when it's manufactured, full lengths and so it makes sense to mimic that. If that's a good test, then it's a good test here. And what we find though is that there, the limitation of that is it's only done one time a year. And so what the study group did was for European customers, they identified a way to test it more frequently, and they felt that after every use was a better approach than waiting until the end of a cycle. That means that in the current US system, hose can be cleaned and loaded back on the apparatus, and we're really not sure if it has sustained any damage as a result of the last firefighting activity. And so the alternative testing approach is simply testing it within the machine incrementally. So it goes under a pressure, shorter time period, and but the testing occurs in real time after every event. And so that same section of hose that might not have been subjected to an annual test, for 12 months from now, might have been tested or evaluated or pressure tested or leak tested two, three, four, five, six times before the annual test. And so in Europe, what we've seen is a movement away from the full length testing and acceptance that the machine testing is sufficient and adequate in demonstrating that the hose is ready for service.
Fantastic. And I wanted to move on slightly to a point that you raised earlier.
Okay.
Firefighters are increasingly aware of, the dangers of contaminant exposure, especially now, we're seeing lots of data and statistics come out. So how does Hosemaster help reduce this risk? And in what ways is it safer than, perhaps traditional cleaning methods, or like you said, waiting until that annual cycle?
Right. Traditionally, fire hose was cleaned on the apparatus floor or on the apron, the back of the station, the front of the station, and which means that firefighters are using brushes and hoses to just spray the debris that comes from fires, and soaps of soapy buckets of water. And today what we know about the contaminants is that this isn't wood soot. These are synthetic materials, plastics, a lot of hydrocarbon materials, and we know that the contaminants that come out of a fire in someone's home today are much more serious and toxic than kind of traditional materials of the past. And so what we're seeing is that we really don't want those contaminants, spread in the fire station, in the workplace. We do the same for their protective clothing, those textiles. We want to get those materials off and encapsulated, and so there's a lot less interaction. So what happens, unfortunately, is when you're using brushes and hoses, that material gets aerosolized, it's in the air, and it moves around the fire station. Hosemaster is a fully contained system that is ventilated and drains out into an appropriate you know enclosed draining system. So it prevents the contamination that gets spread when you're just simply cleaning up after a fire. And as part of a clean room system, architects have been interested now as they're designing new fire stations, they're putting in clean room environments. The hose master is the perfect complement for that because it has both a dirty side and a clean side. And but as a standalone unit in a fire station, it is a clean room, clean compartment experience, which we believe dramatically reduces the amount of mycotoxins that are going to be spread around after the fire, which is really the goal of that contaminant reduction process that both European and American fire services care about.
Definitely. And you're right, these types of materials, they're only going to get worse. We're already
That's
seeing with,
right.
electric vehicles and in
Yes.
apartment fires that have been multi-occupancy building fires that have been caused by, an electric scooter or something like that. And those kind of fumes are adding not just complications on the firefighting side of things, but, a whole new kind of
Right.
toxin
Right.
element. So yeah,
Exactly.
absolutely, we can start mitigating that. And, it's great to hear that that thought process is already being, it's starting to be put in from the foundation of building a firehouse. So, that's brilliant. And lastly, I wanted to talk about obviously, you said that you had some experience on kind of procurement and investment, that kind of side of things. So what kind of ROI can fire departments expect from Hostmaster? Is it anticipated? What is its anticipated, sorry, service life? Tripping over my
Right.
words there.
Right. Well, I'm going to take my firefighting helmet off, and I really appreciate the health and safety conversation. It's core, um, and I'm going to kind of move over to the idea of efficiency. The labor investment, that's a factor in the calculating return on investment, and the time that it takes to process, and the speed and the turnover of getting hose from being unavailable to being available, from being questioned about whether it's serviceable to being available for service. um, and then of course any administrator on either continent cares a lot about resources and funding, because there just isn't a public safety organization that I'm aware of that has the funds to purchase all the things that make the job safer and better for their firefighters. So it's a fantastic question. The the hose master, first of all, is a such a high quality piece of equipment. It is designed and manufactured the same way that a company would manufacture firefighting apparatus, meaning that it is designed for longevity. So, um, the price might be, a little shocking, and that's a function of kind of the features that each agency is asking for. But we're talking about an appliance that's going to provide a minimum of 15 years of service, and we have just taken a machine out of service after 17 years of continuous heavy use, and we predict that it could have gone longer. So the components are fantastic. The machine is designed for longevity, and when it's used appropriately, again, it's a one firefighter or one technician labor worth of staffing, and the machine can be used for one, two, three shifts a day, continuously, and with the proper maintenance. It's got really high-end components, designed to last for a very long time. And so what we find is the trade-off between the technology, the amount of labor that's not needed to do it the traditional way, and the water saving features, the reduction of spreading contaminants, and the reduction of potentially the long-term health effects. This is microdose toxins, and so we see there's a little bit of that as part of the factor. And we know the movement of inside fire stations of having clean spaces. And um, and, and, and if you think about the investment over that period of time, it is a tremendous value, tremendous value. And so those are kind of the things that we think about when we are answering this question, return on investment. I want to go back to something you said a minute ago that is really important, and that is that the standard setting agencies are often limited by the capacity to do something different. And Hosemaster is the first time anyone has ever seen the opportunity to do it differently. And so, as the standards change in the health and safety realm, and they collide with the standards required for cleaning and testing, we see that Hosemaster bridges that gap perfectly. And as an investment, especially a long-term investment for an organization like a fire truck, it will more than pay for itself over that 15-year lifespan.
Brilliant, thank you. And just before we close, obviously, anybody who's wanting to find out more about Hostmaster or perhaps more information, where can they find you guys?
Sure. The very best place is to direct them to our website, which will be provided here as part of this. And they can also just do a Google search for Hose Master Study Group. And I'm a technical rep. And I help fire departments, organizations understand the technical details and application of the machine. And so they can find me on that website. They can call our number, and we'll get back to them straight away.
Brilliant. And unfortunately, that's all we have time for today. But thank you, Frederick. It's been such a pleasure to talk to you. Hopefully, I'll see you at the next show at FDIC, perhaps, and we can catch up some more. But thank you.
Thank you, Rebecca.